Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So today I bring you a Capablanca game. Although the last time it was also a game against Aron Nimzowitsch, today we have a much more exciting game and a very exciting position. One thing I am glad that I started this series with Capablanca because of games such as this one. So a lot of build up for the starters, not like in the last game where we had a pretty boring opening and after which we did maybe had that endgame, which from which you could have learned something, and it was an opposite color bishop endgame, which Capablanca won with an amazing endgame technique. But this time it isn't about the endgame; it is actually about the middle game. So also pretty interesting, sharing a positional novelty and share for that time, of course. So 1914, not a lot of things. Position-wise were yet discovered. I mean, some masters had their opinions about what is good and what is bad, but here Capablanca definitely a guy who starts his own path and shows it once again that he knows that he understands the position, that he knows the position, and he knows the game of chess. So enough with the build-up, let's just jump into the game. Here in this game, Nimzowitsch is with white pieces and Capablanca is black. Of course, on e4 he answers e5, and after knight to f3, knight to f3, knight to c6, we see knight to c3, so knight to f6, entering the four knights game, and after this Nimzowitsch goes for bishop to b5. So d6, a usual tool used by Capablanca, playing the steady old Steinitz defense, where he found himself comfortable. Okay, of course not expecting that he will get something from the opening, but he definitely knew that most of his opponents are much better prepared in the openings by him, and he wants to wait for the middle game and for the end game to get an advantage and then go for that win. And it is the same in this game. So after d6 we see d4 and bishop to d7. So Nimzowitsch wants to open up the center. First he takes on c6, bishop captures on c6, and now queen to d3. Capturing on e5 doesn't do you much good. You will exchange queens and you can exchange some pieces in the center, capture the pawns, but in the end neither white or black did gain anything. So queen to d3, adding a defender for the e4 pawn. Pawn captures on d4 and knight captures on d4. And now actually Capablanca plays a move that isn't usually played in this position. He plays g6. So usually what you would see, bishop to e7, developmental move so that you can go castle as soon as possible, or maybe even moving this bishop, I don't know, so moving the bishop back to d7 so that the knight doesn't capture and mess up the queen pawn structure. But here g6, and many people at that time considered this move to be just too slow, because it essentially forces a loss of a pawn. And Nimzowitsch shows it immediately. So knight captures on c6, pawn captures on c6, forced. Queen to a6 attacking the pawn, queen to d7 defending. Queen to b7 attacking the rook, rook to c8, and now queen to a7. So just after a couple of moves, black has lost a pawn. It is a border pawn. Okay, not much meaning there, but for the endgame it is a pass pawn because now the a pawn is here. The queen inside the pawn structure is quite nice, and black has this double pawns. So all in all, it doesn't seem all too good for black. But Capablanca has an idea. Bishop to g7, castles and castles. So both of the players castled, and now it's time to create a plan. We are in the middle game, and quite soon we see the idea from Capablanca. First, okay, we have to mention that Nimzowitsch in a couple of moments in this game didn't quite play the best of moves. For example, here he played queen to a6, even though he could have just continued with something like bishop to d2, connect the rooks and just finish the development. But he plays queen to a6, he wants to bring the queen back to d3. Rook to e8, queen to d3, defending the pawn, and now queen to e6. f3. So now the pawn is defended, but now since the queen moved from d7, now it's time from knight to d7, and soon enough Capablanca equalizes the game. And why do I say it? Not just that he equalized, he might even get in a much better position. Here Nimzowitsch should have played bishop to f4 to stop knight to e5, but he missed it and played bishop to d2, and now knight to e5 attacking the queen. Queen to e2 and knight to c4. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where black, even though he is a pawn down, has a very strong attack against the white queen side. And this is something that we see quite often nowadays, for example, in the Benko gambit, and those kinds of gambits where essentially black gives the a pawn and the b pawn, and when the rook with the rooks on the a file and on the b file attacks on the queen side white, and also he has a dragon on g7, the bishop on g7 that slices on this diagonal. And of course we don't want to forget the activity in the center. And just with this knight coming on c4, bishop being on this diagonal, we just need the rooks on the a file and on the b file, and white is already in, I would say, pretty big trouble. And this is something that Capablanca just found over the board. He had an idea and he went for it, and it definitely is an idea that you can see nowadays in lots of games. But for that time, this was essentially a novelty, and players didn't really know how to respond. But you will see after a couple of moves, white queen side will just crumble. First, rook from a to b1, so defending the pawn, which is an okay move. But immediately Capablanca goes on the a file, since this rook moved from the a file. Not attacking this pawn, but keeping the rook here to keep pressure. a4, so pushing the pawn, possibly, okay, going for the ideas of pushing to promotion, but okay, that is pretty much too slow. Here a4 is pushed, still the knight is defending. The plan is also to push b3 to kind of move these pawns in such a way that white doesn't have any problems, that the only pawn that he needs to defend is the c2 pawn. But of course Capablanca doesn't allow this. He first captures the bishop on d2, queen captures on d2, and now queen to c4, which essentially stops b3 immediately, and because there is too much pressure on the c3 knight. And now we have a rook from f to d1. But okay, if for example knight would have moved to kind of allow b3 more easily, because if b3 you capture the knight, you can still capture with the rook on a4. If b3 is played, there is this queen to c5. Check, king moves, and then the rook moves to a2. And once again, the pressure is really big on the white side, and black is better in this situation. So here knight wasn't played on a2, but a rook from f to d1. But this allows the other rook to come to the b file. Once again, Capablanca goes for the main idea. And what is the threat here? If you play something like h3, there is this rook captures on b2. And if rook captures, bishop captures, queen to c1, bishop captures on b2, queen to b2, and after queen to a4, now black is a pawn up with a very active position. Even though it's a double pawn, very soon we will see with this battery here, we'll see much problems for white. So once again, Nimzowitsch has to think of the way how to manage this, and he plays queen to e3, so moving the queen out of the way so that bishop to c3 isn't with tempo. But now rook to b4. So plans to double up on the b file and have a very strong attack on the b2 pawn, or even threats of capturing the c3 knight. We see queen to g5 now, so as it seems Nimzowitsch really doesn't know how to play in this position. But if you just look at the position, there aren't any good moves. So moving the knight comes with a just losing of the pawns. If you cannot move the rook on any meaningful square, if you move this rook, this knight will be captured quite easily. Yeah, it's really difficult to play white position, and it proves what a genius, for positional genius, Capablanca really was. To find such an idea from that early in the opening with g6 and bishop to g7 was just quite amazing, and the players of that time were quite struck by it. So after rook to b4, we have queen to g5, and now bishop to d4. Here Capablanca could have immediately played something like rook from a to b8. He didn't need to play bishop to d4, but I guess he wanted to put the king in the corner. So king to h1, and now after rook to b8, now he allowed Nimzowitsch to actually sacrifice the rook for the bishop. Queen captures on d4, and now the other rook comes on d1. So temporarily, okay, let's say Nimzowitsch got rid of his troubles, but essentially what happened, he gave the exchange, and he won't get anything in return. The queen will just simply move to c4. The threat of capturing on b2 is still a threat. So we see h4, making a draft for the king so that he doesn't get checkmated on the last rank, and rook captures on b2. And now we are pretty much sure that white's position is kind of just lost, but Nimzowitsch nevertheless plays on. Queen to d2 defends the knight and the pawn. You could say it's the best move, but at this point white is just playing, and Capablanca will show that with his impeccable technique he will quite easily win this game. Queen to c5, holding the 5th rank now, rook to e1, and now we see queen to h5. This pawn is here for the taking, so Capablanca decides to just take it. Now we have rook to a1, after queen to h4, king to g1, and queen back to h5. Nimzowitsch tries to push the pawn, but it won't give him too much. So a5, rook to a8, a6, queen to c5 check, and king goes back to h1. Now queen to c4, attacking this pawn, a7, and queen back to c5. So as it seems, it isn't like white is having any threats. He has pushed the pawn to a7, but Capablanca will easily pick it up. Now e5, maybe trying something like if Capablanca captures here, that he wants to capture on d6, but Capablanca slaps him in the face and plays queen to e5. He isn't worried about this pawn or there being any threats. He just captures with the queen, and he has time to go to c5 and capture the pawn once again. We see rook to e4, and now queen to h5, king to g1, queen to c5 check, king to h2, and now he could have played rook to a7, but he decided to play d5 first. Once again, first not allowing the knight to jump on e4 and maybe the rook come somewhere near, and he just waits to improve the position, and he has time to pick up the pass pawn, which is on a7. So truly an amazing position for white here. Now we see rook to h4, and rook finally captures on a7. Capablanca isn't afraid of something like queen to h6, because simply he can capture on c3. Queen captures here, king to f8, maybe one more check, king to e7, check here, and after queen to f6, black has got rid of all of his problems, and now he has a rook up. So he definitely wasn't afraid of something like rook to h4 and all of these ideas. After rook to a7, we saw knight to d1, and after also making this move, Nimzowitsch resigned the game, because after this, queen just simply can capture on c2. You have to capture, otherwise on g2 there will be checkmate. Or if you play to g5, then queen can pick up the knight. So two unstoppable threats. Nimzowitsch decided that he is finished. And yeah, that is actually the first round from the very strong St. Petersburg Tournament of 1914. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, this is like probably the most important tournament of the first part of the 20th century, because not just it was held at that particular time in history, but it also was the tournament that would mark the next challenger to Emanuel Lasker. Okay, Lasker was one of the participants, but the second in the tournament, if Lasker was first, could also be a challenger. Besides Capablanca and Lasker, there were Akiba Rubinstein, Frank Marshall, you had Sigvard Tarrasch, David Janowski, Aron Nimzowitsch, of course, and the future world champion after Capablanca, Alexander Alekhine. So quite a field of very strong players. And Capablanca starts off amazingly with such a game, and he definitely shows that he wants to be the one to surpass Emanuel Lasker at the throne. So yeah, that being said, this is pretty much it for this game. I will definitely continue with the coverage of the 1914 St. Petersburg Tournament, and if you would like to see more of that, definitely I will yeah, just watch over this channel. So yeah, that being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.